One of the topics that comes up a lot with adult students and maybe older beginners is the desire to sight read better, to see improvement with sight reading, being able to pick up any piece of music and understand it pretty quickly. So today I'm just going to give you a few ideas about that and hope to encourage you with sight reading. A few points that usually come up. Number one, are you able to keep your eyes on the music and not on your hands? Don't look up and down and up and down. That's number one. I'd have you check to make sure you're not slowing yourself down by having to look at your finger every time you play a note. And of course, there are ways to build that into your muscle memory and into your skills. Practice scales without having to see your hands, or chords. How about chord inversions? How about a piece that you're comfortable playing? Play it without looking at your hands. See if you can use your sense of touch and your sense of sound to connect without the visual. Okay, so that's one point that I would check right off the bat. The second thing that we usually run into is rhythm, meter, counting. Good sight readers usually have a good sense of pulse and keeping that going, even if you play a wrong note. Keep that in mind. If you're sight reading something, it's not about stopping and fixing every single thing. It's more about setting a tempo and keeping it moving, keeping the beat, keep looking ahead. I see a lot of students kind of look at the music and just begin. I've said this before, I know, but just kind of start with the first note out of nowhere. But I think you're better off to start thinking of the meter. So what I mean by that is counting, really recognizing, am I in 4/4 or 3/4 or something else? And count before you play. So 1, 2, 3, 4. You might think 1, 2, ready, go, play, and keep that going. So when you're sight reading, when you're working on sight reading, push yourself to keep the beat going. Count out loud, use a metronome, play one hand if you need to, okay, rather than stopping and starting all the time. And of course, we never go backwards in the music. If you mess something up, leave it behind and we'll come back later. You don't want to stop and start when you're sight reading something. The third thing that I see is kind of funny, but it's the topic of being a good guesser with music, having enough experience and knowledge of music theory that you can sort of predict what's going to happen. Most of the music I've showed you is classical, piano technique, classical, traditional type of writing, which means that we're staying within one key. We're using a scale. We're using kind of a predictable chord progression. If I'm in the key of C and I have a G7 chord, what's going to come next? Probably a C chord. So when I am sight reading something, I'm using some of that guessing, okay? And I know that sounds crazy, but it's true. You can kind of get used to these musical patterns that happen. If a note is, if we're descending in a scale, what's going to come next? You can understand that. So these topics, I think, will get you going in the right direction. Don't look at your hands. Count out loud, use your metronome, and get a little more comfortable with music theory, enough that you can kind of predict where this music is going and what might be coming up next. Now, if you've done those things and you're still struggling and you're not able to sight read something fluently, it's probably at too high of a level. Usually I tell students about 2 levels easier is where you should feel comfortable sight reading. If you're playing something that has 3-note chords, you might be able to sight read something with 2-note chords. You want to take a step back so that you can play it easily. If it's something that you can't play easily, it means that you need to practice it. That's your practice level. So sight reading level and practice level are 2 totally different things. And even for me, that's true. I can sight read something at the intermediate level, no problem, but if I'm looking at advanced piano music, I would have to spend time to understand it slowly, piece by piece. So the more you sight read, the better you get. Try to do it every day. Good luck.